Okay, here with Devananda Pandit and Śāstra-cakṣusā podcast. He's here live in studio. This is our studio. You can see Krishna in the background.
Mhm.
He's like the producer
Mhm.
of the show. But I'm going to share a screen here. We're just going to read a little bit and then we're just going to have a discussion.
Mhm.
So this is text 55, Srimad Bhagavatam 3:21:55. So
This is Kardama Muni speaking to him.
Swayambhuva Manu, right?
Yes, Manu.
Swayambhuva Manu was the one of the progenitors, right? Like they named the word man after Manu.
Hmm.
So he's like this is like ancient history.
And what's really interesting too, of course, bringing this up before we read this verse, but in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna specifically points out in the fourth chapter, Transcendental Knowledge, that I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god, who instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind.
Is that Swayambhuva Manu?
Well,
There's Vivashvata Manu, one of the Manus. Huh?
one of the Manus, but I mean, it's a reoccurring because he says he again and again he needs to reestablish uh, this knowledge because and it's handed down from saintly king down through saintly kings, and
Right.
in due course of time, the knowledge is lost and it has to be reestablished again.
Now, why is it lost?
Good question. Why is it lost?
Yeah. Why does that knowledge disappear from the earth? It seems like Lord Chaitanya's movement, it says it'll be in extent for another 10,000 years. So what causes it to actually dissipate from the earth?
The purity of those transmitting it gradually diminishes. So therefore, there's some interpretations. And it may be out of sentiment,
Yeah,
out of a good sentiment. Nevertheless, it may, it may create a little wedge where they
right.
gradually there's an error or something or a deviance. There's a deviance. So then, therefore, again and again, it needs to be reestablished. And then Krishna, of course, instructed it to Arjuna.
Yeah, it's
So,
like an apasampradaya. It
mhm.
forms and then it becomes morphed into something that it really wasn't to begin with. That's kind of like what I had the idea of. I mean, that I always thought of like how does it go away? I mean, Krishna's knowledge is eternal, but
Well, it's like the classic example. You put five people in a room and then you whisper in each ear,
yeah, yeah,
I say
yeah.
something, you repeat it. By the time the last person speaks it, there's definitely going to be some changes.
And also, things last as long as they're pure. And as long as people can transmit, as long as you have a representative of the pure message, just like Prabhupada's, he has Bhagavad Gita as it is. In other words,
Hmm.
this is Bhagavad Gita. He would say, this I'm not manufacturing anything.
Hmm.
This is Bhagavad Gita as Krishna spoke it to Arjuna. I'm saying the same thing. None of these gurus, they have anything different to say.
Hmm.
So Emerson used to say that as long as a book is pure and the person speaking it is pure, it has longevity.
Hmm.
Just like he was giving the example that Jesus Christ, he plowed his message into his human civilization for 2,000 years.
Hmm.
And so similarly, uh, whenever there's a decline in religious principles and whenever there's a deviation or whenever people are not, are just engaged in sense gratification and not paying attention to the Vedic knowledge, then it just like goes off into it doesn't exist on the planet anymore, and then it has to be reestablished,
Hmm.
right? And you have to. That's what Arjuna was. That was the reason why Krishna's because he was his friend and his devotee. He had to. That's the two qualifications in order to understand the Bhagavad Gita. You have to be someone who's intimately connected with Krishna, and you also have to be devoted Otherwise, it's not possible to understand it. Only by Krishna's grace, he has to give you the Bhagavad Gita, and you have to be qualified to get it, you know.
Mhm.
That's why it's so important to have a relationship between the guru and the student. Both have to be qualified, otherwise there's no transmission. So whenever there's a break in the transmission, whenever there's a deviation,
Mhm.
like our spiritual master used to say that, you know, a transmission is like a wire, electric wire. If there's any resistance, the wire gets hot. But if
Mhm.
there's no resistance,
Mhm.
then the current goes through it. You know, it's like a transparent via medium
Mhm.
from teacher to student. You want to read this verse here? And
Yeah, so this is from the third canto. I'm not sure which number or
it's
chapter. Chapter
55.
21, text number 55. And a translation, Kardama Muni speaking to Manu. If you gave up all thought of the world's situation, unrighteousness would flourish, for men who hanker only after money would be unopposed. Such miscreants would attack, and the world would perish. Shall we read the purport here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Because the scientific division of four varnas and four ashrams is now being extinguished, the entire world is being governed by unwanted men who have no training in religion, politics, or social order, and it is in a very deplorable condition. In the institution of four varnas and four ashrams, there are regular training principles for the different classes of men. Just as in the modern age, there is a necessity for engineers, medical practitioners, and electricians, and they are properly trained in different scientific institutions. Similarly, in former times, the higher social orders, namely the intelligent class, the Brahmanas, and the ruling class, the Kshatriyas, and the mercantile class, the Vaishyas, were properly trained. Bhagavad Gita describes the duties of the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. When there is no such training, one simply claims that because he is born in a Brahmana or Kshatriya family, he is therefore a Brahmana or a Kshatriya, even though he performs the duty of a Shudra. Such undue claims to being a higher caste man make the system of scientific social orders into a caste system, completely degrading the original system. Thus, society is now in chaos, and there is neither peace nor prosperity. It is clearly stated herein that unless there is the vigilance of a strong king, impious, unqualified men will claim a certain status in society, and that will make the social order perish.
And Prabhupada was making this point when he was talking about um, on the bicentennial. You know the bicentennial? You remember that?
1976.
1976.
Yep.
Prabhupada was talking about he had an interview with Back to Godhead magazine, and
I was in Canada cheering from the bleachers.
yeah, let's see here. I want to look this up because it does have to do with this verse. Whoops. Yeah, Prabhupada was talking about how you have to have qualified leaders. You can read this part too. Let me just read it. See, you know, government artificially puts all classes of men into one class, and there can't be happiness. You have to just divide them into like different divisions, like Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. And if a Shudra is engage in something class that he's not qualified for, uh, then there's chaos in society. And not right now is like the fourth class men are electing 10th class men.
Yeah, but and for many out there, the question becomes one of which authority, who can make the claim that such social order should be this way or that way. So this begs the question, well, who created this system?
Krishna created it.
Of course, we say that as devotees of Krishna, but a large section of society will, label it as mythology
Or caste
or
system.
man caste system, man created, man spoke, man wrote the Vedas. It's so, of course, it's not something that we can't convince people simply on the basis of faith, but there is a we can judge by the fruit. However, we can judge by the fruit of the action. That in itself, when you have individuals who are trained and who are also inclined in a particular social division, we can see that such peoples who are engaged in this way are happy. That's conviction. That in itself can be a great conviction. We can see that people are happy when they're employed in a capacity that they're not naturally inclined and also trained.
Well, that's it. They train children from the very beginning. They test them. You give them a
Mhm.
book, or they give them a
Mhm.
coin, or they give them something else
Mhm.
to show to, or they give them a like I don't know what they give them like for a kshatriya. No, they don't give them a knife because kid could put their eyes out. But I think that everybody is materially in a certain mode of nature. And so if they're put into a position according to that mode, then they can make gradual progress. Because if you're not in that situation, just like certain men, most men have to be married,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It says that if you're not married,
Mhm.
it's like a gender of the elephant. He was in the water and he was getting weaker and weaker, and the crocodile was in the water,
Mhm.
and that was his natural habitat. So he was getting stronger and stronger as the fight went on. So you have to be in the ashram or the caste that you're specifically meant to be in
Mhm.
naturally.
Mhm.
Everybody is governed by the modes of nature in this material world. And as long as we're under the modes and we're not completely transcendental to it, we have to work within that system,
Mhm.
and then we'll be happy because the Varnashram institution is meant for cooperation with a common cause. It says here,
Yeah.
because you're not trained up, they have no common cause. The
Right.
hand and the leg work differently, but the common cause is to maintain the body.
Right.
So, like the Vaishyas are the legs, or no, the arms. No, the Kshatriyas are the arms. The Vaishyas are the stomach, and the Shudras are the legs, and the Brahmanas are the head.
Mhm.
And so, but all work together for the good of the common body,
Right.
the capitalists and the workers. If you don't find a common cause between the capitalists and the workers, then there's going to be fighting.
Sure. And and
So,
and and again, based on qualifications. If the kshatriya, the nature of the kshatriya is courageous, leadership, resourcefulness, courage in battle. But these, of course, then in themselves are not good enough. All these qualities need to be tempered, guided by
yeah,
the brahmanas,
by the head of
by the head.
society.
Yes.
My complaint is that, about uh, the fault I think that I've not only myself, but other devotees have seen in this society is that there is no training as far as like the the general public or devotees in particular what to do in any kind of ethical or moral situation. And devotees are afraid to speak out as far as like what is right or what is wrong, or to make decisions by themselves in order to, like any kind of political situation, like say the war in Ukraine. Bhakti Vigyan Goswami, he's a guru, he's from Russia.
Hmm.
He got in trouble for saying something about the Russian situation.
Hmm.
And he said, it's not a matter of politics. Devotees are very afraid of politics because
Right.
Prabhupada decried the whole idea of politics. He
Hmm.
said, well, I don't vote. I don't even get involved with it.
Hmm.
And so devotees are trying to follow that, but they're really not transcendental to it, and they don't know how to talk about it because they look at it as like the third rail of preaching.
Hmm.
You can't like get involved with that because otherwise it'll cause a disturbance.
Hmm.
But without that guidance from devotees are supposed to be the head, the brahmanas.
Hmm.
So without the brahmanas, there's no head, there's no guidance. So where are the general mass of people, and where are the devotees in general, the society with ISKCON, where are they going to get guidance as to how the issues that affect them and who is best representing them? Now, certain devotees say, well, we're not going to like endorse any candidate unless they're completely aligned with Prabhupada. That's not going to happen until hell freezes over.
Hmm.
There's no chance that, we don't live in a monarchical situation anymore. There are no saintly kings. So we have to make the best use of a bad bargain.
Hmm.
So if you're waiting for the GBC, he said, one guru, he said, we should have a guideline that the guru should tell all devotees not to endorse anybody that's not completely aligned with Prabhupada. And so that means that he thinks that we're too stupid to actually figure out what's the issues that affect us as a society, or how the best choice to represent
Hmm.
us in regards to those issues. Because this is pretty, it has to do with preaching too. I mean, we have to preach in this
Well,
world.
I think this is a good opportunity for devotees to interact with individuals in their communities, nearby in their communities,
Yeah,
where they can offer a perspective that perhaps these communities are not aware of. And this is one of, first of all, rather than focusing, for example, some of these conversations may focus on threat and perhaps uh, sure, there are different threats that are being presented, but another way to look at how the conversations could go is finding out what are the needs? What are the needs that are not being met here, according to the divisions we have here in society, whether it's the working class, whether it's the mercantile class, or the ruling class, or the scientific class, intelligent class. So what are the needs that are not being met here?
mostly
And
it's a spiritual need. If
it's
you had a
and it is.
spiritual, if you had a spiritual solution, all of our problems, the Prabhupada's spiritual master said, if the only problem in this world is a lack of Krishna consciousness.
Mhm.
So because we don't have devotees that are teaching each other and society in general, they're not interacting with society at large. We have
Mhm.
all these problems in the material world. People are looking for answers. They're looking for some kind of guidance. If the devotees don't supply that, they're going to
Mhm.
look for some mundane personality or conspiracy theorist or some stupid
Mhm.
mystic
Mhm.
that's making stuff up, which is just not going to help anybody. But they're look to QAnon, conspiracy theories like that, and they're searching, they're desperate for some kind of like organization
Mhm.
or group or some answers that can actually employ them and get them started in the right direction as a group, because people need that herd mentality too. And everything is so tribal and divided right now. Everybody's in their own little bubble. And
And what is the unifying principle? That's
yeah,
the
that's
thing.
what Prabhupada is talking about here. Just like, if you're gonna like have that, what's the name of that organization you're talking about that you
Oh, braver angels, the
Braver
braver
Angels.
angels.
Okay, so that's Democrats and Republicans talking to on the
Mhm.
same level. So, we had interfaith conferences, and that's a really good idea. No,
Mhm.
no idea is bad.
Mhm.
And that only went so far, but like it could be superficial too, like Dave Marina Swami would say, "Oh, I'm going to show you my eagle's feather," and then the other guy say, "Well, I'm going to show you my eagle's feather." Oh, that's so nice, and then we're just like agree that like everything is like all kumbaya, and
Well,
you know,
therefore, at least I can speak from my own personal experience here. in terms of a need and in terms of uh, what made the difference for me in my life was a scientific approach to spiritual life. It was a
Exactly.
scientific approach. This is what really, turned the light on. I grew up. I had faith in God. I had faith in a personal God, and
But no
somehow or other,
science, no
somehow or
philosophy
other, there was
behind it.
no science. So people in general, and I think I think there may be some truth to this, that people in general are wary of religions. In general, there's a religious institutions are on shaky grounds. First of all,
That's healthy. Healthy skepticism can be healthy
well, yeah,
because they're all cheaters, most of
at
them.
this point, either they're on shaky ground, or they may want to start rallying together again and ride on the platform of tribal mentality. My religion, your religions, and so on. But this is a great opportunity to present a spiritual science. After all, and Dave Ramita actually spoke on these points here. What are there's 5 C's that separate people: creed, color, culture, class, and what's the other one? Culture, color, caste. You see where I'm going with that?
Color, class, creed,
Uh, country.
country.
Countries.
Yeah, yeah.
So these are all divisive issues. These are
Yeah,
all
yeah.
divisive
And
issues.
it's all based on the body.
It's all based on the body,
So you
including
have,
creed.
first of all, you have to understand how to present Christian consciousness in such a way that people can get a scientific understanding from the spiritual point of view. And they can actually just surrender to the knowledge that's coming from these books. The books are actually the key to scientific understanding because um, it really doesn't take that much effort to just obey, understand where the philosophy is coming from. You just have to surrender to it, and then it'll explain itself. It's not our knowledge. It descends from a spiritual source, and Krishna is always more intelligent than our ability to understand. So if we just follow his line of reasoning, we can actually understand scientifically what is going on in the universe, and all these problems will be ameliorated because Krishna has an answer to everything.
Hmm.
Just like Science of Self-Realization talks about, Prabhupada was talking to Lieutenant Mosey from Chicago. He said, how to cure this mentality? You have to cleanse the heart. You first of all, you have to cleanse the heart, and so that people can receive this knowledge,
Hmm.
and that requires some pious activity, so we engage people in service, and we associate with people, and we give them prasadam and let them hear. And through the hearing process and the prasadam and the association of devotees, that is the thing that actually can be, qualifying. Prabhupada would say first you have to give somebody a brain for them to understand, because people don't have any brains to understand. They're covered over by the illusory potency, and you can't just expect them to understand immediately because Krishna's not
Hmm.
he's not paying attention to them. I mean, he wants everybody to come back to him, but you can't you have to become qualified in order to understand. It's not a cheap thing at all.
Hmm.
Krishna reveals himself to whomever he pleases, and it's up to him, not up to us. So we have to act in such a way that he reveals himself to us, not the
Hmm.
other way around. So,
I really find Srila Prabhupada's point is very impressive in his introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, where he makes a statement that at least theoretically we accept Krishna here, the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita, as a supreme truth, supreme person. So
right,
at least theoretically.
at
So
least
of course,
theoretically,
yeah.
yeah,
So at least because naturally, the element of faith, cannot be disassociated from science. I
right.
mean, people place their faith in external sciences. People put their faith in all kinds of things. Walk out the door, you're assuming the guy coming coming towards you, and the cars are going to be staying on the right-hand side. So, people are putting their faith in so many things on a daily basis.
They have faith
So
in the
at least,
newspapers
but when it
and
comes to God and the spiritual science, people are quick to reject sometimes. Oh, it's just not
or some
science.
kind of guru.
Wait a minute. So you just, at least theoretically, we're just saying theoretically, now follow this, put this in, listen to this with
Yeah,
an open mind. Then we hear about the spiritual science. Krishna says, of all sciences, I'm the science of the self, the
right.
greatest of all science. So you want a scientific world. You want, and those who are possessed of some humility in the scientific world will acknowledge. I've heard some testimonies today on the radio about some people talking about quantum physics and so on, and they were just clearly admitting they didn't have the answers to this, didn't have the answers to this, didn't have, so and of course they're approaching everything from the empirical standpoint, and which is not wrong. Krishna says there.
This is the science nowadays. You know,
Yeah,
they, they don't know what's going on, so they just make it up.
Yeah, Krishna says in the Gita, after Arjuna says, I don't know if I should use my intelligence or should I engage in fruitive work activities. You tell me what to do. And Krishna says, I've already explained to you, two classes of men realize the self, some through empiric philosophical understanding and others through devotional work. So
Yeah.
how to bridge these two? So it's the responsibility of those who are, spiritual teachers to try to offer this information somehow or other, to try to get that information to those who are in a position of leading the subjects, and therefore it's the greatest responsibility because without that spiritual guidance, you know,
All these different groups, all see the symptoms of Kali Yuga in the 12th canto describes it, the symptoms in the second chapter. It talks about how the scientific understanding is no longer there because because they're not qualified. They they
who's they now?
like the spiritual teachers are not qualified to teach the spiritual knowledge anymore, and so they people uh I can't remember exactly what was said, but let me see if I can look it up here. But in the 12th canto, the second chapter of the 12th canto, it really talks about how you have to have a scientific understanding. Age of deterioration, symptoms of Kali Yuga.
Wealth will be considered. Wealth
Yeah,
alone will be considered a sign of a man's good birth, proper behavior, and fine qualities. Law and justice will be applied only on the basis of one's power.
yeah. These are just the symptoms
Yeah.
of this age, and you can see how it's taking shape already.
Hmm.
Uh, if a person's propriety would be seriously questioned if he doesn't earn a good living. So
Hmm.
therefore, all these oligarchs and all these people that are rich, they're looked on as like the leaders of society, and so they
Hmm.
get positions in government.
Hmm.
And but they really don't have to know anything. All they have to do is like juggle words. Like Prabhupada would give an example. He'd mumble some words together and put some Sanskrit in there. So like the Lakshmi Sakshavatastashu of the latricism of wife. And people would think he's very intelligent. And
Well, imitation. I mean,
yeah, it's just
imitation is.
show bottle. They don't really have any answers, and even the politicians that don't have any answers, like Timothy Snyder was talking about Putin, he knows that his whole regime is a disaster. It's an atrocity, and there's really no, you know, reality to what he's doing, but they're doing it anyway just for power and prestige.
Well, if the majority of the population in the country is unhappy, then it's an obvious sign that the person in charge is not doing their job. It's as plain as that. So, and but then the rulers, of course, then there's also an indication that the rulers are not taking guidance from the man of wisdom, who may not be in a position to offer that in this great science.
I was just thinking that it always really impressed me. They're talking about how, oh, there's one purport in here where Devananda, I think he's the one that's like talking about the spiritual person is. I'm going to show this in advanced view here. They the scientists and the religionists, there's a dichotomy between the two now, because the scientists, there's so much of a dichotomy that everybody's believing the scientists now. It's been replaced.
Yeah.
And so therefore, what these so-called religionists have had to do is to compromise their own religion to accommodate the scientific viewpoint. In other words, and even not even the bona fide scientific viewpoint, the made up scientific viewpoint, like how life came from matter, they're accepting that, and so they water down their religion to the point where it doesn't even exist anymore. So that's not even scientific. But Prabhupada was very strong. He presented the scientific viewpoint in such a way that it was irrefutable. He would say, show me, you're a big scientist. Why don't you show me? You have all the chemicals that you know of that are in life. So create life in your laboratory. You have all the chemicals.
Yeah.
So you're a big scientist. Why don't you do it?
Yeah.
He said, no, we'll do it in the future. And he said, that's like a post-dated check. If you're going to give me $1 million, you should give me at least $5 in cash to show me that you have some collateral. But you can't even produce one drop of milk or even a single mosquito in your laboratory, and yet you're saying that life happened in the past from chemicals, and you're saying that you'll create life in your laboratories in the future. They're expecting the past to happen in the future. What kind of nonsense is this? And he would just smash them to smithereens. And that is wanting now. No, there's no real strong, I don't see very much preaching like that. Everybody wants to get along and have like interfaith, kumbaya moments, with all these different religions. We're just going to be nice to each other and we'll preach Krishna consciousness just to be nice. But you have to actually have some philosophical backbone, like, for example, and at this recent inauguration of Trump, Carrie Underwood, who was married to that guy that was on the Nashville Predators, she's like a singer-songwriter. She was in American Idol. She's famous now, but she performed for Trump at the inauguration. And she said, we have to get together. We have to all unite.
Yeah.
Why? You're just like, John Boehner, like they said, well, why didn't they suggested, why don't you go have a drink with Mitch McConnell? So why don't you go and get a drink with Mitch McConnell? Why should I, what is this, all this unity talk? If there's, you show your eagle feather, and that's so nice. It's not on the basis of a common cause. What Prabhupada was talking about, the common cause is Krishna consciousness. It has to be presented scientifically, and we have to understand it and be able to present it to others on a universal basis, not in a sectarian basis, and show that it's actually, if people will listen long enough, the devotees can convince them, because we have the whole entire weight of this cyclic succession and all the Vedas behind it. And we know it's universal because it is. There's only one God. There's not more than one God.
There's nothing so sublime as transcendental knowledge. It is the mature fruit of all mysticism. I mean, it's the greatest of all knowledge,
Yeah.
It's the greatest of all secrets. It is the perfection of religion. It is It's the
everlasting, and it's
greatest
joyfully performed.
greatest science. So
We have to promote it
we
too.
need to
It's
be
just like,
convinced. We need to be convinced and promote it, and
yeah,
we'll be
promote
convinced while we promote it. We'll become more convinced.
the devotees of Krishna, of Lord Chaitanya, are very expert in promoting their different ways, finding the ways and means to inject Krishna consciousness
Mm.
and make it popular, make it so that people will want it. You have to promote it. It's joyfully performed. It's everlasting. Have you ever had something in this material world that has made you happy on an ever increasing basis?
Yeah. I mean, it's like I'm sure you've heard this several times, and I'm sure any viewers here have heard this before. But to me, it's so simple. I've actually heard Wayne Dyer use this example also. But I'm not a human being with a soul. I mean, for the longest time, growing up, I'm a human being, and I believe firmly that I have a soul. But I'm not a human being with a soul. I mean, I'm a spirit soul having a human experience.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Even the phenomenon of birth.
Mhm.
Everybody thinks it's so wonderful, but actually it's just you're accepting a material body according to your desires, and you're forced into that situation. It's not
Mhm.
a wonderful
It's
thing.
not a
It's
pleasant
actually
thing.
horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we don't know that, and so we're making these decisions and we're calling it so wonderful, but it's actually not very
And
wonderful. The
we
birth, death, old age, and disease are the four evils of this
and we make
material.
conclusions. We make conclusions which we claim as truth because of the fact that we don't remember many times, you know. Right.
We're gonna run out of time here.
Yeah. We don't believe that birth is a bad thing
Yeah.
because we don't remember.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're not willing to just
And as
accept
soon
the
as
words of the
as soon as you're
Vedas.
born, you get your parents are all like
Hmm.
coddling you, and you think it's so nice.
Hmm.
It's actually in times of trouble that people wake up. There's no atheists in the foxholes. I think we're out of time here, almost 15 seconds.
Okay.
Man,
Thank you
thank you
very much.
for joining,
Thank you for having me.
and I hope I can get some more people. The two guys Bhagavatam classes is the best way to do it. Uh,
The third one is witnessing.
right. Okay, I'm just going to end this.